Final Fantasy has been around since 1987 when the first game was released, and now it's back, in Magic card form. The Final Fantasy set takes from all the mainline games starting from 1 and going all the way up to 16, which was the last game released when the set came out. Every main Final Fantasy protagonist got representation in card form, and this video will be showing off a commander deck for every one of them. I also want to point out these aren't completely optimal, as I opted to include as many cards from the protagonist's respective game as I could, instead of just strictly the best options. Something important to note is not every game had a proper protagonist. The Final Fantasy 1 and 3 characters are technically nameless as they didn't get actual names till much later, and 11 or 14 are MMOs, so the main protagonist is your customizable character. As such, these games won't be present in the video, but that still leaves 13 characters left. We'll be going in order, starting from 2 onward and ending with 16. So let's start with 2. The 2 buttons you suppress below the video, the like and subscribe button for more content like this, and while you're down there, leave a comment below if you're planning on building any Final Fantasy decks. I'm planning a few Magic and Final Fantasy videos, so if you like that, or general trading card game content, stick around. Anyways, obligatory plug out of the way, let's get to the real video. Final Fantasy II was the first game to have properly named party members, with Firion having the honor of being the first party leader, and if I said that name wrong, I'm pronouncing it as Firion, so just deal with it. I'll admit, I don't know much about Final Fantasy II because the level system was so atrocious I honestly couldn't really finish it. But that's beside the point, let's look to Firion Wild Rose Warrior, our commander of the deck. It gives all equipped creatures haste, meaning they can attack the turn they enter the battlefield. It'll also give a temporary token copy of the equipment that's 2 less to equip before it gets sacrificed. Firion is a pretty unique spin on an equipment deck in mono red, and lucky for us, there are multiple equipment cards that create a token that attaches equipment to itself automatically. This not only gives the first token haste, it also makes another token that will also get a stick around. Cards that do this includes the job select mechanic that was released in Final Fantasy that creates a 1/1 hero token. You also have cards with full Mirrodin, which creates a 2/2 token, as well as Living Weapon, which is a 0/0 germ. The one downside to Living Weapon is unless you equipped a non-token equipment that Firion makes to it, it'll die when the equipment token is sacrificed. It's very hard to ramp normally, but Bitterthorn, Nissa's Animus, gets us a ton of land whenever a creature attacks. You can equip this to any creature and get a mountain the turn you play with thanks to Firion. Battle Scroll is especially strong since you can keep bouncing it back to the hand to constantly make a 4/4 with lifelink and haste. You can equip the gem it makes with other equipment too to make sure it won't die when the equipment has to get bounced. As far as the best creatures to equip the non-token equipment to, there are 2 great choices. Valduk, Keeper of the Flame, can make a 3/1 elemental token with haste and trample to go wide with creatures, and Goblin Gaviler gets a +2 power boost for every equipment to make it extra damaging. Firion enlists Freya Crescent's help from Final Fantasy IX to act as a mana dork for equipment and equip cost, who gets assisted by Ironmere, who basically does the same thing. Here's the full deck list. Commander decks all 100 cards, and this video would never end if I went over every single card decision, so I'm just gonna go over some key cards. You can find links to the deck list in the description below, which will be posted in the same order that I go over these decks. Final Fantasy III is getting skipped over as we go to one of my favorite Final Fantasy protagonists from Final Fantasy IV, Cecil, Dark Knight. As in the game, he starts off as a Dark Knight, sacrificing his life before turning into a Paladin later in the game. Represented by his back half, Cecil, Redeemed Paladin. Cecil loses life equal to the amount of damage he takes, and once your life total is halved, it turns into the Redeemed Paladin side, which gives all your attackers indestructible, while he has lifelink to start regaining all the life you lost. The deck is a mixture of life gain and life loss, wanting to lose life until Cecil flips, starting to work on getting that life back quickly. Cecil's wife and party member Rosa joins the deck, able to grow a creature and give it lifelink. While Paladin Cecil won't need the lifelink, he won't say no to going with 1/1 counters. You can opt to grow Cecil stats or give another strong creature lifelink for extra life gain. Everyone's favorite, most brainwashable man Kane is represented, which I'll be honest, his card is dog shit, since like the game, he'll constantly be jumping around the battlefield to help your opponents. V's really just here for being a party member and Cecil's main homie, despite the fact he's been brainwashed and betrayed by him so many fucking times. Golbez is here thanks to his appearance in the bonus seat, taking on the effect of Sir Conrad, the Grim, who will deal damage whenever a creature dies or is put into the graveyard. Speaking of bonus seat, Cecil Harvey appears again in the 99 as Tim the Reaver, which is another way to bring your life total down while gaining some card advantage. The deck also comes with infinite combos if you want them. Exquisite Blood goes infinite with any permanent that causes you to deal damage whenever you gain life, such as Veto, Throne of the Dusk Rose, and Sanguine Bond. You can also replace Exquisite Blood with Bloodthirsty Conqueror, which has the same effect. You can basically mix and match these cards with these effects to build your own combo. Here's the full deck list. You want to burn your life total quickly so you can transform Cecil, then start gaining your life back with various life gain effects. It's a funky Death Shadow-esque kind of build, but it's the closest to Death Shadow you can build a commander. Moving on to what's my favorite Final Fantasy game, Bartz from Final Fantasy V, and Final Fantasy homies, we so lost. Bartz is an awful commander, and there's barely any Final Fantasy V cards to speak of. Bartz is the only party member to get a card, and he has to settle with his Chocobo homie. In fact, the only other named cards from Final Fantasy V is Exodus, Gilgamesh, and Cid, the last of which was only included because every other Cid got an identical card. So Bartz is flying solo from his party, and I have to be honest, he is dog shit. If you want to build a Chocobo deck, you're much better off using Choco from Final Fantasy IX, but if you're really dedicated to playing a Final Fantasy V commander, you have Bartz, I guess. The bright side is he's easily discounted thanks to having affinity for birds, but there's also not a lot of birds available in mono green, even counting changelings. So the deck kind of falls into more of a landfall theme because at the very least, there are good Chocobo cards that have landfall. Chocobo Racetrack is the big one that'll constantly churn out Chocobo creatures, with sending cards Royal and Rampaging Baloths also creating more tokens when lands enter. Ride the Sopuff and Bristly Bill Spinesower both spread counters when land enters, while Saz's Chocobo and Territorial Scythecraft will grow counters themselves. For those who are itching to play Bartz and Boko, here's the deck list. I didn't go over much because, again, I don't recommend playing Bartz as your commander unless you really want to. But I couldn't leave out a Protagonist no matter how shit their card are as a commander. Moving on to a much less grim commander, we move to Final Fantasy VI. You could argue between Terra or Celeste being the main protagonist, kind of depending on what point of the game you're in. War the Light, Terra's kind of more the protagonist, but War the Ruin, Celeste kind of is. But I'm gonna go for Terra here since he's the one more so considered the protagonist of Final Fantasy VI. Final Fantasy VI had its own dedicated pre-constructed commander deck, so if you really want to play a Final Fantasy VI themed deck, you could play that, which is fully based around the War the Ruin. However, the deck in this video is going to be using the Terra found in the main set, and it's going to be all about these summons. Summons are called Espers in Final Fantasy VI, and with Terra being the main Esper in that game, it's fitting to use her as a primary summon commander. Like I said earlier, I wanted to include all party members I could, synergy be damned. The pre-con did include every party member, so every party member is here. From ones like Edgar to ones you can even miss out on completely like Gogo. Going over summons, for the unfamiliar, the creature comes down and then stick around until the last lore counter is put on them and then get sacrificed. As with the game, they sew up, do some splashy effect, maybe some damage, and then fuck right off. Looking back at Terra, Magical Adept, she'll mill 5 cards, and you can put an enchantment into your hand from among those milled cards, which in most cases will be a summon, since there's no other enchantments in the deck. By paying 6 mana, you'll transform her into Esper Terra, which allows you to make a copy of any non-legendary enchantment with haste. This copy is sacrificed at the end step, so it's not going to permanently stick around though. After copying 3 times, Esper gives you 2 mana every color before reverting back to Terra Magical Adept, and you can use those to cast any number of spells you want. There are various ways to get enchantments out from the graveyard. Yuna, Hope of Spirit, can bring any enchantment back for free with a finality counter, meaning it'll be exiled when it's put back into the graveyard. She'll also give you enchantment creatures Trample, Lifelink, and War 2 to make them extra threatening and give them a bit of protection. Rydia, Summoner of Mist, can also return summons with finality counters, but you do have to pay the mana cost still. Terra isn't the only one that can copy summons, with Yenna, Red Tooth Regent able to make a copy of any enchantment so long as it doesn't have the name of any other permanent. The strength of this is once you start copying with Yenna, you can pretty much keep any summon around, as once the original dies, you can make a token copy of the token summon and just keep cycling through those token summons. You will wind up with a lot of summons being milled, so the Master of the Keys is a useful way to get them back, as it will give all your enchantments escape. There are a couple ways to take counters off your sagas while also getting some stat boost. Garnet, Princess of Alexandria, is a great way, as not only does it remove lore counters, it also grows Garnet stats very quickly. Of course, Power Canune can also remove counters, but only one at a time and only once per turn, since it does have to tap to remove the counters. The deck plays almost every summon in the Final Fantasy set, except for a few that just are complete anti-synergy, most notably Leviathan. From Bahamut, the Fat Chocobo though, most of them are there. Sorry Carbuncle though, I guess Wizard didn't think you were important enough to get a card. Here's a very zoomed out deck list because of the way Scryfall handles grouping. This is one I highly recommend going to the Scryfall link to look at if you're interested in playing Terra. Like Final Fantasy VI, 7 also had a full pre-constructed commander deck with exclusively 7 cards. There are also 3 different Cloud cards. I didn't want to use the Cloud that leads the pre-con since there's already a deck for that. Mono White Cloud is a great card, but a pretty shit commander, so we'll be using Cloud, Planet's Champion, from the starter kit. It has a double strike and indestructible when equipped, allowing you to put equipment that grants stat that onto other creatures. It also discounts all equip costs targeting Cloud by 2, so if an equip cost is 2 or less, you can equip them from Cloud for free. How cool is that? Cloud doesn't get every party member, but he does get a few. Not technically in the main party, Zac Fair does get to come along as a way to give a creature indestructibility. Kate Sith doesn't really help the equipment theme, but he still gets to hang out and even give you some impulse draws. Barrett Wallace encourages you to spread equipment around to deal some burn damage. Aerith gets counters and spreads them around once he dies. Vincent grows in stats and combat damage is dealt, and can damage everyone if his power is 7 or greater. Yuffie can steal non-creature artifacts while attaching equipment for free. Lastly, Sephiroth even gets to join the game by turning modified creatures, which are creatures either with counters, enchanted, or equipped, into creatures with a base power 7-5, which is actually pretty good. With the party out of the way, there are a ton of various equipments to put on your creatures. Blackblade Reforged gives you a massive stat boost if you have a lot of lands on the battlefield. Similarly, Excalibur Sword of Eden gives an enormous 10 power boost, which combined with equipment that makes a creature unblockable, leads to massive damage, and sometimes is enough to take someone out with commander damage in one swing. Sword of the Animist helps you to ramp, something Boros does struggle with, and the Reaver Cleaver can give you treasure tokens that help you ramp even more. There are various ways to cheat around equip costs, with Arden Intrepid Archaeologist being able to put any number of equipment onto any creature. Brass Squire can put on an equipment on any creature for free by tapping itself. Bruno Battle Hammer, I definitely said that wrong, gives a free equip cost the first time you activate one each turn. Here is the full deck list. There is a lot of equipment to be found, and this is the last dedicated equipment deck in this video, with the rest of our commanders having more unique playstyles, but they really wanted to make an equipment theme work. Moving right along to Final Fantasy VIII, we have Squall, Seed Mercenary. Squall is a loner throughout most of Final Fantasy VIII, and his magic card is the same, as he can't actually have any of his party members in his own deck. But you do get to play Squall Lionheart in Squall, I guess, even if it's not really synergistic. Squall gives a creature double strike when it attacks alone, and when Squall deals combat damage, you return any permanent that costs 3 or less mana to the battlefield from the graveyard. The idea is to have Squall be your primary attacker to keep you looping various cards in your graveyard. Since Squall is always attacking alone, cards with Exalted are especially important. Every instance of Exalted triggers separately, so say you have 5 instances of Exalted on your battlefield, they'll all give Squall a 1/1 stat boost, meaning when Squall attacks, that's a +5/+5 stat boost. As for what's permanent you're reanimating, it'll be creatures that when they enter, they force every player to sack a creature. This makes the deck play a bit more of a control deck that keeps your opponents off creatures. A creature like Demon Disciple enters, everyone sacrifices creature. Then Squall attacks alone with double strike. The first strike happens, triggering Squall to bring Demon Disciple back. Everyone sacrifices again, and you choose to sack Demon Disciple. Then the regular damage happens, and you do the same thing again, and that's 3 forced sacrifice triggers for just 3 mana, in one turn. If your opponents don't have any creatures to sacrifice, you can bring back other permanents that benefit you. Hour of Victory can tutor for any card in your library. Momentum Break can help give you light back, and Underhanded Designs can destroy any creature. Basically, every permanent does something when it enters, or can sacrifice themselves when they enter the battlefield. There's also a ton of equipment that makes Squall unblockable, like Brotherhood Regalia and Psychic Paper. And with, hey, Psychic Paper, you can make Squall into a Moogle or a gamer if you wanted. Here's the full deck list. I'll admit, this is actually one of my favorites since it's a very unique spin on the control deck. But fair warning, it'll probably be very annoying for your opponents, so you may wind up getting bullied out of the game by everyone teaming on you. Unlike Squall, Zidane from Final Fantasy IX actually gets to have most of his party members along with him. Zidane, Tantalus Thief, is a theft deck that wants to steal your opponent's cards before giving them back to reap the reward of treasure tokens. As far as party members go, while the deck isn't equipment focused, a lot of party members of 9 are equipment themed for some reason. So Adalbert Steiner, Freya Crescent, and Beatrix Loyal General get to come along. Garnet can be included thanks to appearance in the bonus seed has Lorna the Third Path. Since every deck is playing as many cards from the game as possible, the evil queen from the first act gets to join along for the ride, even though I cannot pronounce her name, along with everyone's favorite traveling Moogle merchant, Stiltskin. Vivi isn't here, but his thunder magic is as a lightning bolt. There are plenty of cards that gain control of a creature until the end of turn, including Unexpected Request from the Final Fantasy set. Seize the Spotlight and Furnace Rain take control of one creature, while Insurrection and Mob Rule can take most, if not all, creatures your opponents control. You make a lot of treasure tokens, so Reign of Riches is especially strong since it'll make any spell you cast using treasures have Cascade, so long as it's the first spell being cast. Zorn and Academy Manufactor always get even more tokens out of everything as well. There is not a lot to say about Zidane's deck. It's fairly straightforward and is admittedly on the weaker side because, to be frank, permanent theft just is not a very strong archetype in Commander. The problem is that even if you steal your opponent's best permanent, they're still gonna get it back. But if you want to build a Zidane deck, here's a deck list for you, and it'll be in the description as per usual. Next up in line is the Final Fantasy that I think had the best story, Final Fantasy X. Like 6 and 7, X had a full commander deck, but this list will be using the Tidus from the main set, Tidus Blitzball Star. It's an artifact deck with Tidus gaining a counter every time an artifact enters the battlefield. The tap effect on Tidus is pretty irrelevant, and it's kind of more for limited than anything. Tidus doesn't get every party member, and sadly, no unit is compatible with Azorius Tidus. But he does get Auron, which can keep exiling creatures when he attacks. Lulu is part of the party too, letting you put stun counters on attacking creatures coming your way, and enables you to easily proliferate to add more counters to your creature. The last party member joining everyone is Riku, who makes a creature unblockable whenever a counter is put on it, and lets you move a counter from an opponent to a creature you control if they wound up having any. The deck is much more focused on artifacts and artifact creatures. Steel Overseer in particular is very useful and easily boosts up all your artifact creatures with counters. Cyberdrive Awakener can turn all your artifacts into 4/4 flying creatures for a turn, and will likely take an opponent out the turn the effect activates. Column Legacy Reforged is a great ramp tool that generates colorless mana that you can use for your abilities or to cast any artifact spells. You can also guarantee an artifact enters every turn with Thought the Spy Network. Tidus even has alternate win conditions in him. Mirrodin Besiege makes an opponent lose the game at your end step if there are 15 or more artifacts in your graveyard, and Mechanized Production automatically wins the game if you control 8 or more artifacts with the same name, something very easily accomplished. Azorius is a surprisingly solid color pairing for artifacts, and Tidus Blitzball Star can be a threatening creature very quickly and deal a ton of commander damage quickly to close out games with ease. The deck list is on the screen now, along with the usual link in the description below. Final Fantasy XI is an MMO that's also barely represented in the set, so we're moving straight to Final Fantasy XII. And for our protagonist, we have everyone's favorite Captain Bosch von Rosenberg of Dalmasca's doppelganger.
I'm Captain Bosch von Rosenberg of Dalmasca!
For some reason, they really like making protagonists mono red. For Vaan, he works with scouts, pirates, and rogues, as whenever you cast a spell you don't own, all those creatures of those types get a +1/+1 counter, including Vaan himself. Vaan gives you spells to cast by exiling the top cards of libraries whenever a creature with that type deals damage, and if you don't cast it, you get a treasure. Vaan is basically the good kind of theft, as opposed to Zidane, who's kind of the bad kind. Vaan is basically kind of like a Ragavan, who's also in the deck, and is a pirate, so you can get counters with Vaan. And if you really want to, if you want to spend the money, you can play the Zidane version of Ragavan. Vaan is basically all alone, with the only representation available from 12 in his colors is the Squall, which is fine. Choco Comet is pretty decent removal, and Vaan from the bonus seat is, to his credit, works pretty well with the actual main set Vaan. The deck is all about casting your opponent's spells. Chaos Wand is one of the best ways to do it, since you also don't need to spend mana on the spell you exile. Wand of Wonder is a bit of the same, albeit slightly more random. Strago and Realm from Final Fantasy VI help out by casting an opponent's instant, creature, or sorcery card, but it does have to be sacrificed at the end step if it is a creature. Plague of Nasari is a way to cast 2 spells for free that it exiles, and with Vaan, gives your creatures a pretty notable stat boost. Triple Triad has the potential to cast 3 spells for free, so as long as they have lower mana costs than the card you exile and cast with it. Most of the creatures in the deck are pirates, as they are firmly in Red's color identity. Breach's Brazen Plunderer is more theft to give you more cards to cast. Stormfleet Swashbuckler is weak on its own, but once you have the city's blessing by controlling 10 or more permanents at any point with it on the battlefield, it also gives Double Strike, which allows you to trigger Vaan and similar effects twice instead of just once. The deck is a unique mixture of theft and go wide with scouts, pirates, and rogues, all while stealing your opponent's spells and perhaps managing to steal the best ones for yourself. Even if you don't cast them, they're exiled, so they're unlikely to ever come up in the game again.
Bosch lives! Don't listen to Ondor's lies!
Moving on to Final Fantasy XIII, we have Lightning. She has a pretty unique ability in that when she deals combat damage to a player, them and everything they control takes double damage until your next turn. This means that your opponents that attack the person you hit with Lightning will also do double damage. So this build is utilizing an extra combat strategy to deal excess damage to your opponents, and in many cases, take someone out with commander damage in just one turn. As far as party members go, Lightning doesn't really get anyone but Snow, who doesn't really synergize with Lightning at all in this particular build, but because he's a party member, he still gets in. There are a lot of ways to easily get extra combat. Aggravated Assault is probably the best, since you can keep giving yourself extra combat so long as you have the mana to pay for them. Similarly, Morag, Fury of Volcom, can give you an extra combat step whenever a land enters the battlefield. These are the only 2 ways to get extra combat on a permanent, but you also got stuff like World at War, Relentless Assault, and Full Throttle to give you even more on sorceries. You want to give Lightning Double Strike with equipment like Fire Streaker and Genji Glove, so Lightning connects once, then the second attack deals double damage. Genji Glove also gives you an extra combat step that helps synergize more. Making Lightning unblockable is also important to guarantee you connect and trigger her stagger ability. Whisper Silk Cloak Brotherhood Regalia, and Trailblazer Blutes are all great ways to accomplish this. Overall, you're often using Lightning herself to deal a ton of damage. You only need to deal 21 combat damage with Lightning, so even just with some minor stat boost and double strike, with the stagger ability, you can take someone out with just one stagger trigger. Just like the game! Anyway, here's the deck list. Final Fantasy XIV is an MMO, so that's another game you get to skip. Thank God, because this is already taking so fucking long. As for Final Fantasy XV, Noctis does have an Esper card, but he couldn't include any of his party members, and only Arden would be able to come along with him. I have avoided using the bonus seed versions of Protagonist as a commander, but with 15, how could I not have Noctis with his boys? They the boys! So instead of using Esper Noctis like we've been doing most of this video, we're using the bonus seed reskin of Kenrith the Return King. Noctis' royal lineage is a pretty important plot point of Final Fantasy XV, and with Kenrith, you can basically build your deck however you want to. To keep with the royalty theme, I've opted to make Noctis a Monarch deck. There's a lot of court enchantments that make you the Monarch, and have a weak effect if you're not, and a strong effect if you are when your upkeep comes around. Since Noctis is all 5 colors, all 3 of his party members get to join him in the fight, even if they aren't the most synergistic with what the deck is doing, but this deck is very much flavor over power. The Arden from the bonus seed acts as a tutor whenever he attacks, while main set Arden can make a demon copy of any card in the graveyard. You also have the honorary 5th party member in the Regalia, which can help you ramp when it attacks, something especially useful in a 5-color deck to ensure all your colors are active. Noctis has a lot of very useful effects you can use, and Zirda the Dawnwalker can help discount that quite a bit. Training Grounds has the same effect while also being easier to cast. These two permanents do stack with each other, and can make it so nearly every effect on Noctis only costs 2 mana. Also, you can catch a fish. Isn't that nifty? You eat some cup of noodles if that's more your speed. Once again, the deck list is here. Again, this one is a lot more focused on flavor, but it's a perfectly searchable deck, much more than Boko, I'll tell you that much. Yes, I'm still very salty about him. And we've reached the end of the line with the last game, Final Fantasy XVI's Clive. Clive is once again a mono-red commander. I don't know what the obsession was with making Protagonist mono-red. Clive is another flip commander where we transform into a saga creature. Clive plays with devotion to red, giving you a potential large amount of card draw to refresh your hand. The backside fights your creatures and ramps you with excess mana. 9/9 is a fantastic stat line for Ifrit, so he can do some pretty hefty damage. Speaking of damage, many enchantments cause your sources to deal double or even triple damage, such as City on Fire, Fairy Emancipation, and Furnace of Wrath. Clive's party isn't exactly huge, but he does get his brother Joshua coming along with him, which guess what? It's actually less than useless in the deck. But I said what I said about including everything from the Protagonist game, synergy be damned. Ultima also comes along, which is a great way to set off some utility lands, and helps ramp you with all your lands that make colorless mana. The deck is very permanent heavy, as you want a high devotion count. Fanatic of Mogus is one of the best devotion payoffs, as it'll deal damage to all opponents equal to your devotion to red. Fix this with damage doublers and triplers, which do stack by the way. That's a shit ton of damage from just one creature entering, maybe even enough to take everyone out of the game. I'll be honest, Clive is also not a great commander, so it's a bit on a whimper, and he's usually better in the 99. He's the weakest of the mono-red commanders, but at the very least, Clive isn't the worst Protagonist commander. Can you guess who it is? Because I've mentioned it all the fucking time. Woo! We made it to the end. That is a lot of commander decks. 13 in total of varying strengths. For me, my personal favorites are Squall, Vaan, and Terra. Some protagonists are better off in the 99, but if your heart's set on making your favorite Final Fantasy protagonist your commander, then you got these to build off of. Thank you for watching. This video took a lot of effort and time crafting all these decks and making them as best I could without going too over budget and keeping it as cheap as I could while maintaining both functionality and keeping it on theme. If you enjoyed the video, do leave it a like, and if you enjoy this and want more content like this, subscribe to this channel. And if you're building on any Final Fantasy commander, let me know in the comments below. I've been JPEG, thank you for watching.